Alright, how's it going, everybody? My name is Ziffin Decisive, here with a video on Iron Man 3, the final movie, and the Iron Man slash Robert Downey Jr. trilogy. It started in 2008, went on until 2013, like a whole 5 years. That's crazy, honestly. This is all in phase two. Like, from phase one to phase two, this all happened. It's just nutty to think about. I can't wait to talk about it. There's a lot to say. I'm happy to talk about it. There's only two movies left after this that I have to watch or that I want to watch, which is Winter Soldier and then Age of Ultron in that order. So I can't wait. So without further ado, let's get into it. So I forgot to mention, I am gonna talk non-spoilers first and then spoilers. So don't worry about spoilers if you haven't watched this movie. You can just leave after the non-spoilers. But regardless, my non-spoiler opinion for this movie, I thought it was good. I thought it was fun. I definitely enjoyed it more than two. Not as much as I did one, because one was a different vibe entirely. But this one had its own improvements, had its own story, had its own characters. And not like they're different from the original characters in the other movies. It's just it felt the most different out of all of them. And I enjoyed that, honestly. It had its own story that it wanted to tell with a character that you could look at and think, where's he gonna go from here? And they definitely took it somewhere. I don't dislike the way that they took Tony Stark and his character and just overall with the movie, right? I don't have many complaints about this movie, honestly. It feels like one of those Marvel movies where it's good, it's inoffensive, it does what it does, and it does it well. It doesn't give me that Iron Man 1 feeling, definitely not. But it's good enough to be like, you know what? This is a good conclusion to Iron Man 3. It's better than 2. I have to say that it's better than 2, and that's good enough for me. So, if I had to give it a rating, I'll give it a 7 out of 10. I think I gave Iron Man 2 like a 7.5. This one I give like a 6.5 to a 7. I think that the soundtrack is forgettable, which usually Marvel movies are, unless if it's like Guardians of the Galaxy, but that's a whole different story. Unless if it's Avengers as well. The characters were as good as ever. Sometimes they had little dips, but I'll get to that when I get to that. And overall, it was a nice conclusion to Iron Man. But regardless, let me get into the spoilers. All right, so as per usual, I have to say this as a warning. If you don't want to get spoiled or want to know anything that happens in Iron Man 3, not even like the main character type stuff, then do not watch this video. Go watch Iron Man 3 and please go watch the full trilogy. I really hope you don't just watch the third one and that's it. You don't need to watch the other two because, Marvel does a good job of like, hey, we can start you off anywhere, right? But please, for for your own good and for my own health, go watch the other two and then watch three. And then if you want, you can come back to the video. My video will still be here, hopefully, and we can talk about it, in the comments, wherever, anything, right? But let's get into it. So this movie starts off with Tony Stark after the events of the first Avengers movie. And I actually do have to mention that you probably do need to watch the first Avengers movie or at least know what happens in it because this movie draws upon that. Some information that happens in there and how it affected Tony Stark. But Tony is he's here. We start off with a flashback actually. 1999 to the turn of 2000, like the Y2K thing, right? And it actually has Tony narrating how he created his own demons, right? Where there's two people. There's a girl that he was trying to hook up with, which he did. In reality, she was trying to show him her her science project and her project to going forward to improve the future and all that. And then you have another guy named Aldrich Killian, right? And he was in the elevator with Tony, and he was like, "Yo, I'm interested in your project. Meet me upstairs in the roof, right? I'll be up there in 5 minutes." Tony never went up there because he was having sex, and Happy was even there because he was still his bodyguard, right? And so it skips to the year 2013. Years later, Tony and Pepper, they're dating. They're literally dating after everything that they went through. Gwyneth Paltrow, by the way, I did not know that was her, but Gwyneth Paltrow and Robert Downey Jr. playing these two characters are together, and so they're having a good time. Tony though he has a bunch of anxiety, he has a bunch of panic attacks, and it's because of what happened in New York when in the Avengers, spoilers for the Avengers, by the way, if you don't want to hear this, but when New York got attacked in the Avengers movie, where he was defending New York with Cap, Hulk, Thor, Black Widow, Hawkeye, Nick Fury, all these people, right? And so it's giving him PTSD because he almost died, you know? He went into space, almost died. He saw a bunch of alien creatures attacking Earth, and now it's just like it's so much to process, right? There's other life, and it tried to kill you. He's working on his suits, and it's basically his hobby, but it's his stress reliever as well. All he knows how to do is just tinker because the running thing in this movie is that he's the mechanic, and it's true. I mean, he is, but regardless, he's not doing good. Even Rhodes, or excuse me, Rhodey notices this. Pepper obviously notices this. She lives with him. So when she goes back home after having a meeting with Killian, which foreboding, she tells him to come sleep with her, and they're sleeping in the bed together. And she notices that he's twitching, like he's having a nightmare, right? And she wakes him up, and she's like, "Yo, is everything all right? What's going on?" And his Iron Man suit attacks Pepper while they're asleep, and she's just traumatized because of it now. His own suit, his own machination that he uses to defend people, is trying to kill his own girlfriend. So it's just like she can't take it. She goes to sleep downstairs, and the paparazzi, the press are interviewing him because there's a person going around, and his name's the Mandarin, and he's a terrorist, and he's been attacking a bunch of places, right? And they're asking Tony like, "Yo, what are you gonna do?" And he basically makes a threat towards the Mandarin, like, "Yo, this isn't about me defending the U.S. This isn't about me versus you. This is literally revenge. I'm going to find you. All right, I'm going to get you." And the reason why he said that was because Happy was at a Chinese area in California, and he was investigating some people that Aldrich Killian was working with, right? And he finds out that they're exploding. They're literally blowing up, not because they're using bombs, but because the people themselves are blowing up. And he gets put into a coma for the rest of the movie. That's why Tony says it, because he wants revenge for his friend, right? And bad idea, terrible idea, because he doxes himself. He literally gives away his address. And so he goes back home, and he finds the girl that he hooked up with back in 1999. And Pepper's there as well, and they're just like, "Yo, what's going on? It's about to be a huge fight." And then the terrorists, lo and behold, to nobody's surprise, blow up his compound. His home is literally destroyed. Tony is almost killed in the action. He manages to get Pepper away from the wreckage. He sends her away with the the girl from 1999. I forgot her name, but Tony's gone. He's cooked. he he gets the Iron Man armor back, and he passes out basically because of his injuries. And next thing you know, he wakes up in Tennessee. The reason being because Tony was looking into the Mandarin, and the nearest place that they could find was Tennessee because of the incidents surrounding it, right? So he wakes up in Tennessee, and he's in a little kid's like garage, right? Him and his mom lived alone. You know, his father left him, said that he was gonna go get something. He never came back. So Tony's just like, "Yo, I need all these things, you know, blah blah blah." And they have a rough relationship at first, but Tony's just basically like, "I'm the mechanic. That's Iron Man. I am Iron Man, but don't worry about that." And so they help each other out in the beginning. Tony takes the kid, and they go to like a bar because Tennessee was where the incidents happened, right? And so one of the incidents, a soldier who was recruited by Aldrich Killian for test subjects, right? The testing was for extremists, right? So basically, extremists was what the guys that blew up in the Chinese area in California were. Like they have orange things flowing through their veins. They heat up their body, all this type of stuff. It's super weird. And if they have too much of it, they explode. So that's why there aren't any bombs, because they are the bomb again. Tony asks one of the victims' mothers, like, "Yo, the information, right? Do you have any information on your son's death?" And she's like, "Here you go. Just take this information and leave, please. I'm tired of being asked." And then he finds out, like, I'm not the person that you were waiting for, were you? And she's like, "You're not?" And then we find out one of the people that she was waiting for was a veteran herself, and Tony met her outside by accident, right? And so She comes in, she just basically destroys the entire place. She he gives the folder back to the victim's mother, and so he basically tries to fend off against her, right? He manages to because he's cracked. He's literally insane, dropping one-liners while he's about to die, and then he manages to fend off against her. Right? It was super cool. That man is getting cooked because there's another guy there. He manages to fend off against him as well. He gets into a car and he dips, telling the kid like, "Yo, do not follow me. This is dangerous. All right, stay home with your mother and be at on call no matter what happens." Right? So he gets the folder from the mother, and he leaves. Right? He goes to Miami. Jarvis in the Iron Man suit are still back at the kid's house because they need a charge. He manages, because it's Tony Stark, is the guy who built Iron Man in a cave full of scraps. He can find a way to charge Iron Man. But he goes to a news van and he's basically seeing this event go down. He goes into the van to get some internet to just find some files on Killian again. He gets that information. He dips after like a fan meeting, and he goes to Miami, right? He goes to Miami for some serious business. Rhodey, on the other hand, who has the Iron Patriot suit, since the suit is basically his now, or the government's, he's doing a bunch of meetings, all this stuff. He's meeting with the president. He's a very important guy. And so he goes to find some of the outfits that Mandarin could be in. So usually in like Iran or Pakistan or anything like that. And it didn't have him in it, but it did have his subordinates in it. And so he gets knocked out because of the extremists. So meanwhile, Tony is in Miami. He hijacks his way in with a gun and some technology, right? He gets in, he sneaks past all these guards. Man has martial arts background because we've seen it. Like he's literally practiced in martial arts in the second and third movie because he needs to, especially if he doesn't want to something like the first movie happening again. But he sneaks in and he finds the Mandarin himself. Turns out that the Mandarin is just an actor, and this is where I find a cool thing about it, right? So in Shang-Chi, we see somebody who was in Iron Man 3. This was him, Trevor, and he was the actor for the Mandarin. And so in Shang-Chi, 6 years later, we see him in the Mandarin's hideout because he's been arrested. He's literally been held hostage for like the past 6 years after the Mandarin business was done and dusted, right? And so Shang-Chi himself literally finds him there. So Tony interrogates him and says he's just like, "Yo, what are you doing here? Who are you? What is your business?" And then he basically just reveals like, "Yeah, I'm an actor, basically. I don't know anything about the Mandarin business. I didn't know that people were getting hurt." And he genuinely is. Like, even though he was a co-conspirator, at the end of the day, he didn't know that people were getting injured. He was just doing it because he's tweaked. Like, he has a serious drug problem. And it's funny, like it's messed up, but it's funny because he was like, they promised me something. I was super hooked on drugs, and then Tony was like, "What? Did they promise you to get you off of them?" "No, they promised me more." It was like, "Duh, that's so messed up." Marvel's humor back in like Phase One and Phase Two, it could get dark sometimes, but it was kind of funny. But regardless, the people find Tony and they lock him up, they chain him up, and Rhodes is still being held up. They're in the same facility. Tony's chained up. The person that was with Pepper was actually working with Killian. She betrayed them, and Pepper is now being tested on with extremists. So Tony's just there like, "Dog, I'm gonna get out of here. I'm gonna find him. I'm gonna find him. I'm gonna beat him up, bro. Don't let me out." He was making threats, and he was talking to the girl, and he was like, "Yeah, listen, I know you're better than this. I remember your name. I remember your projects. This isn't what you wanted to do, right? At the end of the day, you were a scientist with starry eyes, looking up to the sky, ready to change the world. Is this how you wanted to change it?" And then she's just like, "Yeah, it wasn't." Killian walks in. She threatens to kill herself. Killian kills her. Like literally just shoots her. It's crazy. These guys are some villains, bro. But he's talking to Tony. He's just like, "Yeah, monologuing, blah." Killian's not that interesting of a villain, honestly. My favorite villain, I can't talk, is Obadiah Stane was still my favorite villain. But that's besides the point. Killian to me was just boring, kind of uninteresting. But he could fight though, so his fighting was definitely the best. Killian leaves to go experiment more on Pepper. Tony calls the Iron Man suit because it's almost charged. The thing with the Mark 42, you know, I just remember the scene in the movie. So the thing with the Mark 42 is that it can attach around Tony's body, excuse me. He just has to like call upon it since it's attached to his like body signature. So he calls it while he's being held hostage, right? And it forms upon his arm because he has the repulsor beam. He shoots the two guards down. He melts the contraption that's holding him up, and then he gets out, right? He gets out. So he finds Rhodey because he manages to get out as well. And the whole thing with Killian is that he manages to get the president because he puts on the or not the Mark 42, the Iron Patriot armor, and he kidnaps the president and he brings him to a seafaring ship, right? And so this is where the final battle is going to happen because Tony and Rhodey are going after the president, going after Pepper. They manage to find him. Tony goes for Pepper, Rhodey goes for the president, and this is where things go down because, again, Pepper's been experimented on with extremists, and so Tony is now fighting Killian, and Rhodey finds the president. He gets him out of the Iron Patriot armor, and he's just fighting everything, right? And Tony, seeing that there's so many extremists, like people, he summons all of the armor that he had, all of the armor that he made, everything, because in the explosion they all didn't get blown up. They were under the house instead of in it. So they were safeguarded basically. So they all show up and he's fighting Killian and he's swapping in and out of the Iron Man suits and it's super cool. Like he's using his ingenuity, his genius to fight Killian and it's like this final fight is the best fight out of all three of them. For sure. He runs out of armor to fight because they're handling the rest of the extremist terrorists. He calls upon the one and the only, the the prodigal son, Mark 42. And when he shows up, the Mark 42 armor just discombobulates and falls onto the ground. I just the prodigal son is such a funny line to me. I don't know, but Tony basically tries to catch Pepper because before he actually saw Killian, she was gonna fall to her death, right? He couldn't catch her. The Iron Man suits couldn't catch her either. And so for as far as we know, she's dead. So back to Killian, he's fighting him with just pure rage right now, right? Tony wants redemption. And so he's beating him up, he's doing everything that he can. And the Mark 42, the prodigal son, he puts that armor onto Killian and he causes Jarvis to self-destruct the Mark 42 armor, blowing it up entirely, and effectively killing, quote-unquote, Killian. You'll see in a second. So Tony just gets back down onto the ground. He's beat, he's sad, he just lost his girlfriend, potential wife, and now he's just like, man, what the heck? Rhodey is chilling with the president, he's making sure that he's safe, and Killian isn't dead. He survived the explosion. And so he's just like, man, I'm gonna kill you, Tony. I'm gonna kill you, dog. And so Pepper, which good, if Killian could survive an explosion or an Iron Man explosion, Pepper should be able to survive a fall. So luckily they thought that through. And Pepper comes out of the fire. She's super mad. She's ripped. She's like, yo, I'm gonna beat you up, dog. And she just starts swinging on Killian, literally beating him up and killing him. She actually killed him. And then she calms down, looking at Tony, and Tony's just like, honey, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. And she's just like, wow, that was violent. And so they hug, they're chilling, and Pepper's worried, like, yo, wait, hold on, don't touch me, I'm hot. Like, because of the extremists, and Tony's just like, see, you're fine. You're perfectly fine. And so they're hugging, they're having a beautiful moment together, and all the Iron Man armors are there. And Tony's just apologizing to Pepper, just like, I'm sorry for everything. I'm better now. I'm good. I'll do better. And since it's Christmas, like it actually is Christmas Day, he blows up the Iron Man suits, right? He blows every single one of them up. And you think, like, but how's he going to be Iron Man? And if he does, why would he do that? That's just sending him back. Think of it like him in Iron Man 1, where he changed Stark's direction, right? Where instead of making weapons, he's making shields. So here, it's kind of a similar thing, but not in the purpose, but more in the sense of like he's starting over and going in a different direction. And it's the sentiment too. It's for Pepper as well. He's not done being Iron Man. He's just done being the person that he is, right? Here, instead of going left or right, he's going through the middle. He starts by destroying the Iron Man suits. He also goes to help Pepper get the extremists out of her body, and then finally he gets the heart monitor out of his chest because there's shrapnel in his chest. So he has the surgery done. They take the shrapnel out of his chest, and now he's good. He doesn't need the heart thing anymore. He's normal Tony Stark once again. And he leaves because the his house was destroyed and he has a new house now. And that's the end of it. Tony Stark, his character arc is over. And I thought it was great. I thought it was a fun character arc because I love the fact that it makes Tony human, you know? After everything that he's experienced, after everything that happened in his trilogy, he can still get panic attacks. He can still feel anxiety. He can still feel that nervousness, right? The man just confirmed that aliens exist and that they tried to kill him, and he almost died. Literally, I feel like it's fitting. I'm glad that they took this direction with him. And it shows that Marvel can, like, other continuity in Marvel can be used for good, you know? It can be used to improve characters. Like in Spider-Man, how Infinity War and Endgame are used to improve their movies. Or here, how the first Avengers movie was used to improve Iron Man. Like, I think that is cool how they can draw upon other media and events because it's linear, you know? At the end of the day, these events happened. So there's no way around that, right? But regardless, this movie, forgettable soundtrack. I'll be honest, Marvel movies usually don't surprise me with soundtracks except for Guardians of the Galaxy, which I can't wait to watch the third one. Oh my gosh, I can't wait to watch the third one. Oh man. Alright, but that aside, the story was good. It wasn't the best one. To me, the Iron Man 1 story was the best one, but that's a whole different thing. The characters were good. They were at their peak basically. Pepper and Rhodey, they never really changed much. We don't learn much about them, which sucks. I felt like it was definitely wasted potential, but it is what it is. They're good supporting cast for Tony. Tony, at the end of the day, he is the main character, so that's how it's always gonna be. The villains, pretty whack. Not as whack as the as two, but it's not Obadiah Stane, and it will never be Obadiah Stane. Killian, Justin Hammer, but at least Killian had cool fights though. I will admit Killian is pretty cool. But overall, this movie to me is just a 6.5 to a 7 out of 10. It was enjoyable for sure. And I thought that it was a good conclusion to the Iron Man story. It didn't have my jaw drop to the floor, but I thought it was a nice love letter to the Iron Man fans and to Robert Downey Jr., you know? Because that man is as much a part of Marvel as Captain America, as Thor, as anybody, you know? So, it's beautiful to see. But yeah, that's basically the end of the review, you know? Thank y'all for watching. Let me know what y'all think down below about this movie, about the Iron Man trilogy. Which trilogy is your favorite? You know, is it Captain America? Is it Thor, which I think has 4 movies, which is weird. This one, or Guardians of the Galaxy, Spider-Man. Ant-Man, actually, Ant-Man has 3 movies too. That's crazy. Which Marvel movie trilogy do you enjoy the most? Let me know down below. But I'll see you all in the next video. Peace.